What's up, everybody? Welcome to Benjamin Bakchoi here. Brand new channel, brand new series. And I decided to put some videos up after months and months of this pandemic boredom. And the fact that I'm really into F1 content on YouTube, but it seems like I can get through the new videos in an hour or two after waking up. And I assume that a lot of you guys are the same. There's only a few channels that I like to watch consistently, and usually when I'm done with those 2 or 3 videos in the morning, I'm kind of like starving for more. So hopefully this can bridge that gap for a lot of you guys that are in the same boat as I am. And full disclaimer before we start here, I don't claim to be an amazing driver or anything like that. I still race with the racing line assist on. No other assists, no traction control or braking assists or anything like that. So just kind of, I hope you guys don't mind the racing line up. I'm trying to learn to drive without it right now, but I'm still more confident with the racing line on. But without further ado, here's our first race. It is ranked online at Spain, and the first thing I like to look at here is obviously just go through the rankings and see if there's anybody that concerns us here. And other than that, Oi Mate 92, that's the same level as us. I was spectating the race before, and this Genya guy from Japan, he might only have a first level silver rating, but he seemed pretty quick in the race before when I was waiting for this race to start. So I'm kind of focused on those two guys. Spain's not a particularly strong track for me, and I'm not an expert at setups or anything like that either. So the setups that I use are mainly just time trial setups that I go through and kind of just test a lot of the top esports guys setups, and whatever I set my quickest lap time with, I usually just save that and use those for races with a little bit of tweaking here or there. Most of the time, it's just the the wings I'll put up by one each, just because time trial cars has a lot more downforce on it, just because you're going so much faster. But this race, I think I just kept all the settings the same, the setup the complete same, just lowered the fuel load to make the car as light as possible. So here we go into qualifying. And again, not a very strong track for me. So if you see a lot of mistakes, it's it's for that reason. But going into qualifying, I usually like to keep an eye out in the bottom left-hand corner there with the mini map, just to see if I'm setting any fastest sector times. Obviously, you don't want to focus too much on it, cutting that corner there to save a tenth or two. But we do set the fastest first sector. And there's a lot of corners in Spain that I'm not completely confident with. This left-hander in particular, it's very easy to kind of lose control of the car there if you don't hit that curb, that inside curb on the left perfectly. Easy to invalidate your lap here as well, going out wide to the left there. But for the most part, those two in this last sector is probably the most difficult part for me, especially this final chicane right before the end of the lap here. This left-right, hard to keep consistent speed through there for me, but I see a lot of other people not having too much trouble with it. But we end up qualifying on pole anyway, so I know I set the quickest lap, so I'm hopeful that I am the quickest guy on this track. You can't be too sure. A lot of guys will make mistakes in qualifying, so even if you do set the fastest lap, doesn't mean you're the fastest guy on the track. And I also like to take a second to look at the lap times here. And P2 is only 1/100th of a second behind us, which is a little bit concerning for me. And this Kenyan guy is about a half a second behind us. So he's going to be a worry as well, just because I know now that I can't make too many little mistakes or he'll be right there. But Looks like P2 will probably be on our tail the entire race as we just barely out-qualified him there. And this is the most nerve-wracking part for me in any race. Um, I think this was the first race of the night for me, and I hadn't been racing on the Barcelona track much before this race, so I'm a little bit tentative on this first lap, which I usually am just because the qualifying lap, the car feels so much more different than the actual race because you're going so much faster and you have a little bit more downforce on your car. So this first lap of any race, I drive a little bit more carefully, try to feel out the grip, see where I can push it, see where I can't, and kind of just get a feel for the track before I start pushing in the rest of the race. So I'm usually shaking in my seat by now with the lights going out, but looks like it's a pretty decent start for us. We're not going backwards, and there's no cars getting bigger in our mirrors. But now towards the end of the straight here, the cars are starting to come a little bit closer. I'm not sure if I made contact with P2 there or not. It looks like it was pretty clean, and I didn't get any collision warning or anything like that. So it looks pretty good so far, and I know that he was right behind me in qualifying, so I won't be pulling ahead of him by too much during the race. Like I said, any number of reasons could have caused him to have a slow qualifying lap, so he could be, 3/10, 4/10, or even a half a second faster than me, but just had a poor qualifying. But coming into the end of Sector 2 here, I feel like I hit the brakes at the right time there. I'm not quite sure if he just was driving a little too aggressively and wasn't racing, wasn't really reacting to my racing, or if he was trying to make a sloppy overtake there and made a mistake. But seeing this, how he just spinned out of that last corner, I will assume that he was just driving a little too aggressively and maybe just trying to make a move at a really bad spot. But anyway, I feel bad for the guy, but I don't feel like we were responsible or anything. I feel as if when you're the guy behind, you kind of have to react to the car in front of you. You can't expect the car in front of you to hit the brakes or accelerate where you would personally hit the brakes or accelerate. Everybody drives differently. Everybody takes every corner differently. So it's kind of on you to not crash into the guy in front of you. So as much as I hate to see people spin out of races or anything like that, I don't feel like I did anything wrong there. But anyway, now we are out ahead, and it looks like that guy spun out again behind us, so I'm not sure if he got wing damage or anything like that. But now I feel like it wasn't our fault in that first turn. But enough about him. Now we have to worry about this Ginya guy who qualified in P3. He was only about a half second behind us in quali. And like I said, when I was spectating the race before this one, he seemed pretty quick. And I think he might have just been on a new account or something like that. Just hasn't gotten his rating up yet. But he is a lot quicker than you would expect for somebody with a single silver rating. So now I'm trying to pull out ahead of the DRS zone. And this upcoming DRS zone isn't really long enough for anybody to really make a move. I feel like you kind of have to be right on the guy in front of you, like right on his tail, to be able to make any sort of move in coming out of this DRS zone here. And he's about 7/10 back, so he's a little bit too far back to be of any real concern to me. But he seems to be following pretty well. He's driving pretty conservatively as well, so I'm making notes of that in my head. Anytime I look into the mirror and kind of look at him, I notice he's driving somewhat conservatively. And now he's about 6/10 behind us, and he has DRS. So I'm watching him in my mirror now on this straight, just enough to not go off the road here. And I noticed that his car is still fully visible in my mirror. Still leave him a little bit of room on the inside there, just in case he tries to do anything crazy. But I felt like he wasn't really close enough for me to try to defend too heavily. And by this point in the race now, I know I'm probably not going to lose him at all. He's driving really well and he's keeping up. Um, and this isn't a really strong track for me, so I'm not expecting to pull ahead of him by some crazy amount of time or anything like that. Coming into this next DRS zone, he's still about a half second back, and a little bit too far back for me to be too concerned about him. We do get a warning for track limits there, but he doesn't really make too much time on that straight. So now hoping to just have a neat final sector here, try and pull out a little bit more of a gap before we head down the start-finish straight. And we are coming up to our last lap, so this will be his last really major chance to try and overtake. He gets a little bit of a tank slapper, so he falls back a little bit. Makes it a little bit easier for us to defend, but we are down on ERS and he's getting ever bigger in our mirror here. But I choose not to defend on the inside because this is a right-left combination here. And even though he does get in front of us for a split second there, we have to make a left turn and I'm on the inside anyway. I know a lot of people will tell you to defend the inside on a corner, but that's really only on single corners there. That first turn 1 and 2, there's a right-left combination, so I prefer to be on the outside of turn 1 so that I can get the inside on turn 2. And again, like I said, I was watching him the whole race and he was driving pretty conservatively, so I didn't expect him to make any crazy pinching maneuver or squeeze me off the track or anything like that. He was racing pretty well, really respectfully. So I didn't think he would try anything too crazy there, and he didn't, to his credit. But that was pretty much it. After that last straight there, as long as I didn't make any mistakes, I pretty much figured I had this race in hand, and we do barely get the win, only a tenth and a half ahead of him, but the race was over pretty much when he failed the overtake at turns 1 and 2 there, just because of the nature of the track. And now just at the end of the race, in case I do stay in this lobby, I do kind of like to just scroll through and just catch the last couple of moments and see how these guys race just for like 20 seconds or so, kind of gauge how they might act. And now watching the replay back, I realized that the guy that tried to overtake us on the first lap got into quite a few incidents during this race. So now I feel even less bad or less responsible, as I feel like maybe he was just driving a little too aggressively and erratically, and it wasn't us that forced him to kind of go off. But anyway, here we are going into the second race of this video. But enough about the first race. Here we are in the second race here. It is in Britain at the Silverstone track. Completely different lobby on a completely different day. As you can see, we've ranked up to first level gold here, and initially looking at the lobby, it doesn't look like it's going to be a tough race here. It's kind of hard to find competitive races as an American. By the time I get onto the game, it's kind of late afternoon or early evening, and I feel like most of the high level competition, most of the guys kind of live in the Eastern Hemisphere in Europe. So you'll get Canadians, Americans, and some South Americans, but I feel like you don't run into too much top level talent. Not that I'm a top level talent, kind of mediocre, but it's really hard to find guys that race at my level in the ranked lobbies anyway. I don't really enjoy the unranked lobbies just because everything kind of just really goes to crap before turn 1 in a lot of unranked races. But Going into qualifying here, we're using another time trial setup, just kind of raising the front wings by one to get a little bit more confidence to the sweeping right-hand turn before the Maggots and Beckett's complex. Also helps out with turn one. You can kind of go full throttle, 8th gear, without having to lift off with 3-6 wings. For me anyway, I know some guys can go full throttle with 2.5 wings, but I'm not confident enough at that second right-hand turn. But anyways, going into qualifying here, keeping an eye out at the bottom left-hand corner, just to keep an eye out for sector times here, hoping to, at least in this lobby, seeing where the other guys' ratings are, hoping to get all the fastest sectors in this race. But also using qualifying kind of to get a feel for the car. So when I don't really do like a lot of practicing on my own. So sometimes when I go into online rank races, it's kind of like cold, you know. So for example, we're at Britain right now, but I might not have raced on this track for a couple days. So even though I would normally be confident if I had gotten in like 15 or 20 laps in before a race. Sometimes I'm going in cold, so I'm not completely confident. But we do set the fastest sectors for 1 and 2, so it looks pretty good for us so far. And Sector 3 is flat out in about 75% of it. So unless you make a huge mistake in one of the 3 corners here, if you get fastest sectors 1 and 2, you're probably gonna get pole position in for the race, which we do. So looking at the qualifying times, as you'll see in a second, we qualify 2.2 seconds faster than P2, but that's not the point of this race here. The point of the race here, as you'll see in a little bit, is patience, driving smart, and knowing when and where to overtake on track. So yeah, you can see the qualifying times there. There's really not much competition at all. But, you know, just because somebody's slow in qualifying doesn't mean that they're specifically doesn't mean that they're bad on the track. They could have made a mistake in 1 or 2 corners that made them lose a lot of time. But going by the ratings before in the lobby and by the times after qualifying, I'm pretty confident here that we're not racing any esports guys by any means. With that being said, however, I still am nervous at the start of the race, as I am with any online race here. Hoping to have a good start. Trying to feather the throttle for maintaining optimal RPMs, but you can see from the proximity arrows right away that we did not have a very good start here. P2 managed to get a really good start. Credit to Blue Manolo there. So now, initially I was just planning on a very easy, laid-back race at the front for pretty much the entire race. My mindset now has to change a little bit, and now it's kind of just keeping an eye out on how P1 is driving there, analyzing where he's strong on the track, where he's weak on the track, trying to see if his qualifying time is representative of his pace on this track, and then just managing my resources in my car to make sure that I have what I need when I do want to overtake. And I know we aren't even through 1 lap yet, but just from the way P1 there is moving, I'm pretty sure that he's not particularly strong at this race, at this track, I should say. And I don't mean that negatively in any respect. You know, some guys just aren't strong at certain tracks, or maybe they're just kind of new to the game, or just haven't had much practice, but just from the race perspective anyway, it looks like I can pretty much overtake this guy whenever, wherever I want. Um, Up till now, P3 is still sticking behind us, only about 6/10 behind, but as you can see, makes a little bit of mistake and starts tumbling back and bleeding time. So now I really don't have to worry about the guys behind us. Doesn't look like they're catching up with any considerable pace. So my attention can now go fully to the guy in front of us. And he's just kind of driving erratically. I don't think he's a pad player. You know, pad players kind of, even on the straights, they're kind of zigzagging all over the track. It just looks like this guy's not super confident in a lot of the turns on this track. So I know I can overtake him whenever I want to, but just because I know that I'm faster than this guy doesn't mean I can dive bomb willy-nilly into any corner here. You can still ruin your race with a poorly timed, poorly executed overtake. So now it's my goal is to go into resource saving mode, only really using rich fuel mix and a little bit of overtake to maintain this this gap, make sure that we're still in DRS here. And it's not really too difficult just because he's losing a lot of time in the corners. So before any overtake, I like to just kind of do a test run as I'm doing down this straight. Just put it into overtake and rich fuel mix, just to kind of see what our closing speed is, get a gauge of how his car is set up compared to how our car is set up, and how fast we can close in on him. So I wasn't trying to overtake in that last DRS straight. That was more of just a speed test, and it looked like we closed in rather quickly. So I know that if I wanted to, I can overtake him on this back straight. And I did think about it for a second, but because he kind of went offline through Maggots and Beckett's there, we kind of had to back off a little bit just because I didn't want to crash into him in case he came back on the grid. And as you can see, I did use a little bit of overtake there right at the beginning, but as soon as I realized we weren't closing in fast enough, or as fast as I would have liked to, I just put it back into medium deployment and decided to hold off until either this next lap or the last lap. And again, I'm taking notes of where he's braking for these corners here, and particularly the last corner, the last left-right corner in Sector 3, just so I know what kind of gaps I'll be working with if I do try to overtake on the straight, on the back straight. So we're doing a pretty good job of sticking behind him, still about 50% ERS, which is more than enough to overtake on the back straight. Keeping it enrich for a little bit there just to maintain this gap. And now I decide that I'm close enough, I want to try to make an overtake and not risk it. But again, he has a poor entry and exit into Maggots and Beckett's, but because he had a poor entry, he compromised his exit. So I decided to make a move now, and even though it's still kind of close here on this straight, and he's still kind of close behind going into these last couple of turns, I've been noticing that he brakes really early for this last, I'm not sure if this is a chicane here, but this last left-right. So even if he was really close behind me, I knew he would brake early, and I really didn't have to defend that last corner there. So again, the key to this race here is, even though you know you're faster than the guy in front of you, you still need to be patient and play it smart. Don't waste your ERS and your fuel too early in the race to try and make half-hearted overtake attempts. Before you make an overtake, just kind of test what your closing speed is, so you can kind of get a gauge of how close you need to be to try and make an overtake. Take notes of where their braking zones are, where they brake, where they turn into corners, because little things like that will help you. It will give you all as much information as you need when you're trying to make an overtake. So it doesn't really help when you make an overtake if you don't know how they're driving, you know, um, or how they will react in the following sections of the track. So he could have easily followed me into this corner here and outbraked me and kept ahead, but I knew that he likes to brake a lot earlier than I do for these corners, so I was pretty confident that he wasn't going to outbrake me, and he didn't. And again, to this guy's credit, he drove pretty clean and he didn't try to make any crazy moves to stay out in front like some other guys like to do. Um, but again, the key to this victory was just patience and taking in as much information as you can to make the correct move at the correct time, um, in the correct spot on track. So I know these weren't amazing race, any amazing races by any standard, but um, they contain a couple of key bits of information to help uh, make newer drivers a little bit better at racing. So thank you guys for sticking with me for this video, and hopefully stay tuned for some more. Thanks, guys.